Hello and welcome back. In this section, I want to focus on the various ways that we interface with AWS, specifically going into a little more detail about the console and later in this course, the AWS CLI. For the console, we're going to talk about various ways that we can access AWS services, as well as looking into account settings, documentation, forums, submitting support tickets, and for the AWS CLI, we will have a lesson later on in this course, which will be a hands-on walkthrough on how to install and configure it. So again, let's just take a look over here on the Orion papers for our account connection tools. And first, we'll take a look at the console, which we have up right here. And first, I just want to note several different ways that we can access various AWS services. So first, you'll notice that there is a services tab up here in the navigation. You can just click on that, and it'll open up a drop-down menu with all of the services that you can access, as well as doing a search for anything that you happen to be looking for. In addition, there are recently viewed services and also all services which match the same dropdown as up above. Now, once you find a service that you want, obviously, as you've seen up to this point, you can just click on the service. It'll take you into the service. And if you ever want to just navigate back out to the main page or to the main page of the console, you can just click on the 3D cube up here in the corner and it will take you right back out to the main console. So some really simple navigation here. Now let's focus on your account or what account you happen to be logged in as. So right up here, if you click on the drop down, you will see what IAM user you are currently logged in as. Here, we're logged in as the admin user. It also gives you the account number if you ever need that information. And then you can also click on links to manage your account, the billing dashboard, or security credentials, or to switch your role. So let's go ahead and let's click on my account. So the first thing you're going to notice here is that there's an error. It's saying that I need permissions in order to access this part of the console, specifically everything having to do with bills and budgeting. And this is something that even though I have full administrative access for the admin user, it's something that needs to be turned on the root user account for other people to be able to access. So let's actually do that right now. Let's log out of this account, log into the root account, and enable this feature so that me as the administrator of this AWS account, I can view current monthly bills, explore the various costs that are associated with this account. But this is also valuable if you have, say, an accounting department that may need access to nothing else but the billing dashboard for AWS. So again, let me sign out of this account. I'll sign back into the console, but this time going into the root user login page. And then what we want to do is go back up to your username, go to my account. Then we want to scroll down until we find IAM user and role access to billing information. Click on edit, click on activate IAM access, and then click update. Great, so now that that has been enabled, we can scroll back up and we can sign out of our account and then log back in as our admin user. But before we do that, just in case, again, you don't remember or didn't keep track of the login link for your admin user, you can go back to IAM and grab the link right here. So now that I'm logged back in as my admin user, I can go back to my account. And now I should see that I have full access to my account settings and, more importantly, to the current monthly bills, the Cost Explorer, the budgets, the reports, and everything else that may be required to properly administer this from a cost and budgeting standpoint. So next, up here, we can take a look at this again, and this is how you manage what region you are currently working in. So if you want to now provision resources in say, the US West, North California region, or move any of your infrastructure to Europe, to Ireland, Frankfurt, London, or to Asia, all you need to do is come here and click on one of these, and you've just switched to that particular region. So now if I were to provision, say, an EC2 instance, I'm actually provisioning an EC2 instance on AWS hardware in a data center that is located in Singapore. If I were to click and say, move this to South America, I am now provisioning an EC2 instance on hardware that is located in South America. So just be very mindful that as you choose and switch between various regions, that you are literally then launching or using services on physical hardware located in those countries. Next, let's take a look at support. And this is something that is super important that I feel is often very overlooked, and that is how to use these various support features. So let's take a look first at Support Center. So Support Center is where you're going to come if you need to submit any support tickets to AWS. So these can be things like you're having technical issues, or if you hit one of their soft limits, meaning that you've hit a limit on the amount of a type of service that you are currently using, you can come in here and create requests to have more access or to use more of something within AWS. And we'll go into limits as we move into various sections of this course. Next, we can take a look at forums. This is a great place to come to, one, find questions that have already been asked and answered, but to also ask questions ourselves to get help and assistance from other people in the AWS community as well as AWS employees. Next, let's talk about documentation. And this, I feel, is the most important piece of this entire lesson, because as a solutions architect and as somebody that uses AWS on a daily basis, documentation becomes an extremely important resource. There is no such thing as an AWS expert that does not use documentation. So don't ever feel that you shouldn't have to use documentation. I use documentation all the time. I'm constantly referencing it. I'm constantly looking up things because AWS is so large. There are so many little nuances, little bits of technical information that it is impossible to know how to do everything from memory. And it is often multiple times a day that I'm in here looking up specific information that I may need to administer items or applications in AWS. So here's just a list of all of the current AWS services and the direct link to all of the documentation for those services. So let's just take a look at Amazon EC2. When you click on a documentation, there's going to be various documentation types. So there's going to be here, there's a user guide for Linux instances, a user guide for Windows instances, then the EC2 section for using it with the AWS CLI. And then within each one of those sections, there's various formats. So HTML, PDF, download it and view it on an Amazon Kindle. So just taking a look here at the HTML version of the Linux instance guide, here it just has now a full documentation on how to use Amazon EC2 specifically for Linux instances. So there's tutorials, there's information on Amazon machine images, then you see all of the subcategories within that. Monitoring, network and security, storage, resource and tags. Most of the questions that you will have when using AWS, the answers can be found here in the documentation. So it's extremely important that you become very comfortable with knowing how to find the documentation, how to navigate around the documentation, because I guarantee that in your life using AWS, you are going to be using documentation all the time. So again, that's just a quick review of the console, the navigation, and how to find various settings and documentation that you will need to know how to access and use as you start to use AWS in your daily life. And with that, we'll conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching. You may now move on.